This is Devin writing daily. Every single day we get together and we talk about writerly things. I'm not sure how you're seeing this, but you might be seeing my face in a little teeny box, and directly below that it'll say Cat. And so that means we have a guest today, and it also means that we're having technical difficulty in showing her fabulously beautiful face. Today we are with Kat Kambes, who is actually one of the original members of my weekly writers group, and I love her to pieces. She is an absolutely wonderful writer. She sent me a little bio, which I may actually ignore because it may not tout her genius effectively enough, in my humble opinion. So it says, Kat Kambes teaches, takes art programs into prisons. Yes, matter of fact, we can talk a little bit about that because I think that is a wonderful program. And writes to keep her sanity, her growth, and her sense of humor. And she has a wonderful one, depending on your point of view. Her work has been seen in Harvest, the Citron Review, I'm assuming that's what it is, Melt, Skiv, among others, and has come to be grateful, ever grateful, to be surrounded by her writerly friends. Kat, can you hear me?
I certainly can. Thank you for those very kind words.
No, I assure you, I'm not kind, and you probably already know that about me. So Kat and I have been talking and have been trying to get her onto this video thing, and, you know, stuff happens. Technology, as I shake my fists in the air. Kat, in terms of your own writing, do you mind if I ask where you're at?
Well, where I'm at of late is I have a new poetry group that I'm working with, and because they're all poets, I've kind of been focusing in that direction. As you know, when we were together, I was working more on my fiction writing.
Mm-hmm.
But since that time, and I've undergone a few physical challenges that started to impede my ability to do long form writing. And so I've had to relearn and navigate a new way into writing. And I know that sounds very abstract, but it's very true and very painful. And I'm sure I'm not the only one who has had to engage themselves in this way.
No doubt. Do you mind offering a little bit more specifics of what challenges are troubling for you?
Well, I think part of it has to do with medications when you have a physical challenge, and always finding the right dosage. And, you know, it's like trial and error. And through that process, what my body did was mentally, it would just lose the thought. And so I would be writing, and then all of a sudden I had no idea what I was writing about. It was like it would go away. And so, you know, and I was very frustrated, and I kept trying to write long form, and I kept getting frustrated, and then I started beating myself up, of course. Where do we go? You know, you're awful, you can't do this, you'll never be able to, you know, all that terrible stuff that we do to ourselves as writers. And then when Lisa Chibi invited me to start another writing group with her, which we've been meeting for about a year now, because I was with largely poets, and because I had written poems in the past, and what I found through this process was that I could whittle on a poem over time in bursts, and that way I didn't get lost in the narrative. I was able to just focus in on one sentence and at a time. So I could work on one sentence and then walk away from it and then come back and work on another sentence. And, you know, in narrative writing, we don't do that. We kind of go with the flow.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, and which is where I'm trying to get back to. And that's kind of been happening. It's been a slow process where I've been able to get through a stanza, step away and come back. And so that's kind of Did that clarify what I was talking about?
No, I think it did so beautifully. I mean, I think the truth of the matter is that one of the things that I think we have to do as writers is whether or not it is a physical, I mean, I think probably more often than not that we have some sort of mental block. I mean, that's why writer's block has become such a prevalent type of phrase in our language, is because there are so many things that are capable of derailing us. And I think that for us as writers, we're constantly required to some degree to find a new way to get the words out. And I think in your circumstance, you're kind of switching genres.
Well, not really. I started to be able to get, longer and longer through the process. And actually, a few weeks ago, I was able to sit down and write an entire story.
Oh, that's
so
fantastic.
the idea behind, just having to learn a new way to get my wheels operating, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, what happens then definitely turns into writer's block. When you're faced with some kind of challenge like that. For instance, I like to meditate, and I always meditated in a certain position on my knees. And then I was in this car accident and had my knee shattered. So I could no longer meditate in that particular position. It was too hard on my knee. So I had to learn a new way to get into that deepened state without being in that position. And that was not an easy task. Our bodies kind of fundamentally get conditioned in a certain way. It's very Pavlovian, I know, but it's true. And so there you are. So I had to learn a way to do that, and then I had to learn a way to do other things as well. And however, I will say that during the process, when I kept trying to write and kept losing my way, that beating up that I used to give myself definitely created a massive block. And that's why I say I realize that I really, really need to stay really close with writers, because writers bring the commitment to the words with them, and being around them gives me strength, and it gives me that ability to face the challenge and go forward. And if I isolate, that doesn't happen. So just like any other mental issue that you might have, being with writers helps me to be a better writer.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I mean, as we have talked about before, the writers group for me was something that allowed me to finish my book.
Yeah.
I was allowed to finish my book because I had people like you who were dedicated to their own writing, and we could get together. I mean, truthfully, like, you go out into the world sometimes and it doesn't seem like people read as much as well, perhaps I think they should. That's my own nonsense, running around. But it's really a pleasure when you get to kind of like get to sit in a room. And I always used every week, as I'm sure you remember, I'd always write sort of like an email to everybody. It's like, okay, bring pages and bring snacks. And because we would have this little sense of community, and we would talk about the books we were reading and the kinds of things that we loved. And we'd talk sort of like our writerly thing. So to have a community that was constantly supporting that
Yes.
was wonderful.
Yeah, it is. And for me, I think it's even more than just wonderful, which is really wonderful, but much like a musician, being around other musicians where they can start playing off each other and getting new ideas and generating new thought, bouncing off each other. Just that chemistry alone kind of propels more imaginative thinking. And I've really come to appreciate having writers around me. I know that for me, I write more and I write better when I have other writers, and when I'm responsible to to what they're going to say. You know, they're going to look at my work and they're going to tell me when, you know, this is not clear, or this is a good sentence. This sentence right here is probably your best sentence. And just kind of bringing it down to that level has been a very interesting process. I told you I had been reading recently Annie Dillard's book, The Writing Life is what it's called. And there was another thing that she said that really spoke to me as I've been going through this process. And that was that as writers, the kind of writing, the kind of relationship that our readers have to what we do is very much different than someone who, say, writes for movies, and the movie comes out and it's got sounds crashing against the walls and it's got spectacular lights and explosions, and it just kind of pulls you in. Whereas with writing, every word, every sentence has its own rhythm, and it's much subtler and it's much deeper. And so the person who likes to read is who's going to appreciate that, and not someone who really likes movies. And not that we don't really like movies too, because I certainly do, but that we have to give that honor to the subtle rhythmic nuancing of what it is that we're doing. You know, the attention to every sentence as having its own importance in the body of the piece. And so I that slowing down of the process in a way, which kind of relates back to how going back into poetry helped me to, you know, get my wheels at least rolling, even if they are a little clunky and squared off.
Uh-huh. I think that's really well said. Well said. Can I ask you about, you know, when I was reading your biography, you were talking about sort of your musical project. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, it's actually it's actually a writing project, and
okay.
But we use music, we use instruments, and what we do is we find prisons who are willing to take instruments, and then we find people to go in and teach songwriting.
Oh, gotcha.
So what we do is we have the class break up into little groups, and every week we develop a different theme as a group, and they have to write on that theme. So it's home, or it's mother, or it's child, or, you know, some of those kinds of things, so that inmates can learn how to negotiate these very complex emotions that they have about those types of things, and create something out of it, create something positive out of it. So how can they turn that negative into a positive? And so that's what we try to do.
Go on. That's beautiful.
Yeah. That's so beautiful. We're in 105 prisons nationwide now.
That is so inspiring. And your brother is a guitar player? No?
My brother is a guitar player. This was it's called Jail Guitar Doors. We're based off of the song by The Clash, Jail Guitar Doors. And the first line in there is something like, let me tell you about my friend named Wayne who got caught with his load of cocaine. And so it's about my brother. And Billy Bragg partners with us in Europe. He has Jail Guitar Doors in Europe and brings guitars and instruments in there, and we bring them in here. And so that's kind of what we do.
I think that's a beautiful thing. I think it's great that you're being of service to people who probably do not get as much attention as perhaps they could in correcting their lives. If somebody was interested in knowing more about Jail Guitar Doors, where would they go? We have a website, although it's in the process of being updated. It'll go. Our new website will go live next week, but it's jailguitardoors.org, all one word. Okay, great. And is there anything you're working on personally?
Well, actually, I've started working on Pansy again,
Uh,
and I
I'm great.
realize so I'm dissecting um, the different narratives. As you remember, I have a narrative of one character, a narrative of another character, and the narrative that they are making together. And one narrative is in the past, the other two are in the present. And so I had gotten to a certain point with it, and then I kind of saw what was going to be happening at the end, and I've been told by my writing group that what I did was I got too excited. I jumped ahead. So I jumped ahead, and it wasn't not a good transition. So I have to go entirely back to what I'm working on doing now is dividing the narratives to see where the right place to develop the end from is.
Mm.
Did that make sense?
Yeah, no, no, totally. It totally makes
Yeah.
sense. And first off, I loved Pansy. I mean, this is a book that is still being written, but I've had the good fortune to have listened to much of the story. It is a wonderful story. So I'm looking forward to seeing a final version
Thank you.
and pointing people in the direction of being able to read it. So that's great. And do you have a personal website or anything like that in case anybody wants to reach out to you?
I don't, but I'm on Facebook, and you can look me up at Kat Kambes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, cool. So we're going to do that. And just so you know, for people who have been listening and watching, you can always reach out to me, ask Kat questions. We're not doing this one live today. But we're still putting it on Facebook Live as a video clip because I'm still working out this technology thing clearly. And so, as always, like if you're reading this, like, whoops, I think it's this side. Yes. If you are watching right now, feel free to ask questions. I will get to it. Kat may chime in if she'd like. And always like and subscribe and follow on Twitter and do all those kinds of regular things because we do this every single day, writing daily, because as writers, we want to make this a daily process. Any final words, Kat?
I just think that you're doing this is so wonderful. It's really a wonderful thing. And you know, I really miss you being in the area, because those meetings were very, very much, very precious to me. And I think to everyone who was involved. And I always admired every Thursday we would get that email and say, I'm home writing and I'll wait for you until tonight. And that was great. So I thank you for that.
Oh, my pleasure. It was absolutely an honor to have you on today, and maybe we'll talk some more writing in the future on a future episode. Anyway, thank you so much for being here, everybody, and we're going to be doing this again tomorrow because that's what it's all about, writing daily. Thanks so much for joining us, and Kat, thank you. You have my forever gratitude. I have nothing but mad, crazy love for you.
And kudos to you too. Ditto.
All right. Thanks. Bye.
Bye.